All right, what is up, my friends? Welcome, Dungeons and Dragons, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Full set review, constructed, limited, every single card. We do this every set. All right, my name's Jim. It's first time here. How's it going? Welcome. Hit that follow button, like, comment, subscribe. Hit all the buttons. Check out my content. 10 new brews. So much content. Never-ending content for y'all. We did white. We did blue. We're about to do black. We're going to jump right into our set review here with a Mythic Rare. What's up, Thug? Mythic Rare. Ace. See, I've been getting them right, so I'm like nervous to get them wrong now. Ace Rarak, the Arch Lick. God damn it. Legendary Zombie Wizard. Whatever. Here we go. We got 3 mana for a 5/5 Legendary Zombie Wizard. That sounds pretty good. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, one of the 3 dungeons, return I can't even say it. The Arclick. Return Arclick to its owner's hand and venture into a dungeon. So basically, if you haven't completed a dungeon, this is 3 mana to venture once, and it goes back to your hand. It's basically a sorcery that says venture. But if you have completed a dungeon, you can just cast it. So big payoff for once you finish a dungeon, you get a 5/5 for 3 with upside. Whenever it attacks, for each opponent, you can create a 2/2 black zombie token unless that player sacks a creature. So pretty good value, honestly, on a 5/5. So this is definitely a big payoff for venturing. Now, one note for all my legacy players out there, this is your new Allurin combo card. So all my boomers, what's up, boomers? How's it going? Allurin is a combo deck that's been around forever, and it always has this really convoluted combo. Allurin's a 4-mana enchantment that makes spells or creature spells that cost 3 or less for free. And you can use like weird combinations of creatures like Imperial Recruiter, bounces to your hand, Cavern Harpy, and combo for infinite. This card just does it all by itself. Because with this card, you can... Wait, can you? Does this work? You have to learn. Yeah, I'm sorry. Right, yeah, right. So I knew this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I forgot. It's a lot to work. So you have to complete the Tome of Annihilation. So you don't do that dungeon. You choose the other ones, and you can just keep bouncing it and casting it for free, and bouncing it and casting it for free. And you can complete dungeons infinite times, draw your entire deck, make infinite amount of treasures, etc., etc. So that's pretty fun. Anyway, yes. So for all my legacy players out there, here you go. But for standard and stuff like that, this card's pretty cool. It's definitely a cool payoff for venturing. A 5/5 for 3 is great. It doesn't really venture in a very efficient way, because there are cards that can venture for a 3 mana a lot better and have more consistent effects. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. There's a venture deck that probably goes in it. Kind of cool. Like imagine this card with like things like Aether Vial or ways to like kind of just put it into play a lot or things like that. You could flicker it, which is kind of cool if you were to play this. Put the trigger on a stack, flicker it, trigger it again. It's kind of cool. But all in all, like, the dungeon thing is, like, pretty limited to what, venture decks want to do. So, all in all, it's probably not going to be a world-breaking card, except for Legacy Allurin. But it's a cool card. It's a cool card for sure. And in limited, this card's great. Completing a dungeon in limited is one of the main mechanics of black and white. And once you complete the dungeon, you have a freaking 5/5 awesome creature for cheap. So, phenomenal limited card, backdoor constructed card, and then, of course, Legacy stupid combo card. So, that's magic for you. What do you want? Next card. Asmodeus, the Archfiend. I feel like I'm in a spelling bee. It's like, can you use the name in a sentence? A set of, or source material. 6 mana for a 6/6. If you would draw a card, exile a top card of your library face down instead. So, similar to Yawgmoth's Bargain, where you don't basically have a draw step. You can spend black to draw 7 cards, but note that those cards will go into exile. Then you can spend 1 black and return all cards exiled with Asmodeus to their owner's hand, and they lose that much life. Okay? So, this is a really weird card, because you can draw 7, and you get 7 cards, you lose 7 life. The coolest thing to do with this card seems to just be play it, activate the draw 7, in response, sack the creature, and just draw 7 cards. At that point, though, you spent 6, 7, 8, 9 mana and needed a sack outlet. So, like, There's some power here for sure. Obviously, rituals exist, things like that. But I'm pretty sure if you want to do this kind of effect, there's better ways to do it. Grizzlebrand, Yagamon's Bargain, etc., etc. And then in less powerful formats like Standard, I just don't see why you'd ever want to play this card. So it is very cool with Necrotic Ooze. That's a good one. So Necrotic Ooze becomes black, 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 draw 7. The problem with that is you've executed your combo and not won the game. And those kind of combos aren't very good in Modern. So, it looks cool. It's a Devil God. It's kind of cool. In Limited, this is a 6/6 with a drawback. So, like, I don't think this is really that good Limited either. So this is more of like a casual commander card. You know, you do some fun thing with it. You sacrifice it. You do some stuff. But this is not really a card for competitive constructed, or honestly even limited, honestly. I don't think this card's particularly good in either of those formats. So, kind of cool. It's a bad Colossal Dreadmaw. It's Colossal Dreadmaw with a downside, and no trample. So, the moral of the story here is that Colossal Dreadmaw is by far a better card. Not even close. Baleful Beholder's our next card. 6 mana for a common 6/5, which is not too bad. When it comes into play, each opponent sacrifices an enchantment, or a creature you control gets menace on its turn. This card's not very good. We've seen cards like this that are much better 5-drops. You know, this is kind of a common 5-drop lately. You know, 5 mana, 4/4 comes into play, makes your creature hard to block, whatever. At 6 mana, only giving menace is not particularly exciting, because at that point in the game, there's going to be a lot of stuff in play, and menace is not going to be that useful. And then a 6/5 for 6 isn't very good either. And then sacking enchantments also not very useful. This card is just not good. This is just draft filler. If you're desperate for a big creature to win the game, but not very cool. It doesn't look like a Cacodemon from Doom though. That's pretty cool. Up next is Black Dragon. Of course, one dragon for each color. It's an uncommon. 7 mana for a 4/4 flyer, which is not great. Comes into play. Creature gets -3/-3 till end of turn. If this card costs 6, it would be a premium uncommon in Limited. At 7 mana, I'm not super enthused. It is a 4/4 flyer but kills something, which is good. But 7 mana is a lot. This is the kind of card where you're not like always playing this card. If you need a big creature to win the game with, great. This card will do that pretty well, honestly. But I'm not like putting this card in every block deck I draft. If my deck's aggressive, has a lower curve, or has other big things to do with this mana, I'm not that interested in it, honestly. So, again, if it costs 6 mana, sure. If it gave like -5/-5 with a 5/5, you know, sure, it was bigger, it did more stuff. But this card it has all the workings of a good card, but it's just too clunky for what it does. So I'm not like super enthused, but it can be good, it can win you games. The Book of Vile Darkness, black, 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 legendary artifact. Beginning of your end step, if you lost 2 or more life this turn, make it 2/2. Then you can tap this thing and exile the Book of Vile Darkness, and artifacts you control, name Exodia's arm and Exodia's head, named Eye of whatever and Hand of Vecna, and you get to make a Vecna legendary 8/8 indestructible creature that gains all triggered abilities of the exiled cards. We haven't seen those cards yet, but they're not that great. Spoiler alert. So, it's a lot of work for not much of a payoff, honestly. So, I think this card mostly needs to be looked at for its first ability. And black, black, black for an artifact that lets you get a 2/2 if you've lost 2 life. It's not really that exciting. Devotion is still legal for a little bit, which is kind of cool, but just not very exciting, honestly. Not very exciting at all. And then in Limited, you should not play this card. Limited. It's as simple as that. Check for traps. Fun. This is a fun card to say. Before we do that, I gotta check for traps. It's kind of cool. Very reasonable card. 2 mana. Excuse me. 2 mana limited card. Sorry, 2 mana discard card. Is solid if unexciting. DC play in Standard reasonably often. A little extra bonus here. If you take an instant or a flash card, you gain a life. But this is very similar to, what's it called? The other 2 mana discard spell that exiles. Doesn't always see play. Can see play if there's a need. This card will get a lot better post-rotation as the overall power level of the format drops, because this card is very, very good if things are kind of slow and clunky. When synergy is low and power level is more important, this sort of 1-for-1 discard is very important. Agonizing Remorse is the card I'm looking for, correct. So, not great. Not an amazing card. Definitely a role player in Standard for sure, though. In Limited, Agonizing Remorse had the extra bonus of being able to hit a card in the graveyard. So if your opponent's empty-handed, you can still hit their escape card and get some value out of it. This can't do that. So this kind of card in Limited doesn't make me very happy. It's likely to be dead late in the game. If you need early game stuff to do and want to get to the late game, sure. But on the whole, I'm not like thrilled to have this card in my deck in Limited. So role player in Standard, card I'm not thrilled about in Limited. It's okay. It's fun though. Relax. I am a professional. Oops. Clattering Skeletons. 4 mana for a 4/3, which is fine. Whenever it dies, Venture. Solid card. Sort of like the opposite of the white one. I think it enters the battlefield ability is better than a death ability because this might just not die. It might get exiled or bounced or whatever. But all in all, like, just solid draft common. This is definitely a good draft card. A 4/3 is a reasonable rate. Very, very solid draft common for your black deck. Deadly Dispute. 2 mana for an instant. Additional cost, sack a creature or an artifact. You have to draw 2 and make a treasure. So this is not quite Village Rites. The fact that you can sack a treasure is pretty cool and makes this card probably very reasonable and limited because there are cards that can make treasure. It replaces the treasure immediately and draws 2 cards. So I imagine if your draft deck is focused around the black-red mechanic of making treasures and stuff like that, that 2 mana draw 2 is pretty good. So all you have to do is have a treasure and it makes it just... If there's a treasure in play, this is just 2 mana draw 2 because you get to make the treasure again. So definitely a cool draft card, which is super cool. Constructed though, Village Rites is playable because it costs 1. At 2 mana, not particularly great. And a lot of the treasure cards in Constructed aren't worth it. This isn't worth the juice ain't worth the squeeze here. You know, the fail state here is it does nothing. And the upside is a bad Village Rites. So Constructed, no. But in Limited, this card seems very, very good if you're playing the treasure deck, for sure. So don't think you want a ton of them, but very reasonable card. Very reasonable card. Up next is Death Priest of Miracle. Black 2 for a 2/2. It's a Lord for skeletons, vampires, and zombies, which is somewhat relevant. Beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you can pay 1 and make a skeleton. That's pretty good. So this is a pretty solid draft card. There aren't really like many sacrificey things going on, it feels like, in this set. The Rakdos mechanic is more about treasure. Black-white is more about venturing into a dungeon. Black and blue is about attacking, and black and green might be the spot you want to play with this card. But the effect is good. It is pretty fragile. The kind of card where you don't want to rely on it to pump your stuff because if they kill it in combat, you get blown out. That's a little awkward, but can definitely make some tokens. Pretty cool. Feels like a pretty solid, if somewhat fragile, uncommon for your draft deck. And then in Constructed, this card's not playable. So, pretty cool. Demogorgons Clutches. 3 mana for a sorcery. Opponent discards 2, mills 2, and loses 2. Mind Rot is okay. It's a little below the bar, but okay. I think Go Blank is 1,000 times better than this, though. Because the problem is, milling your opponent for 2 is a downside for you and upside for them. It's not a bonus, it's a downside. Because typically your opponent will want cards in their graveyard. Your opponent would much rather have 2 cards in their graveyard than 2 cards in their deck. Because if they have anything that uses the graveyard, that's a benefit. And those cards missing in their deck, unless they mill down to 0 cards in deck, those cards being gone doesn't really matter. So this is a Mind Rot with a downside. The life loss is not quite Blightning. You know, this card is it's just eh. You know, in Limited, sure. You know, a Mind Rot Limited is totally reasonable. But not very exciting overall. I think Go Blank is the much better Mind Rot in Standard, and then we're often not playing Mind Rot in our deck anyway. So, Devour Intellect. Oh boy,
it's a trap.
It's a trap, folks. When I saw this card, I thought it'd be really, really good. I was like, "There's a lot of treasure stuff happening." Thoughtseize is great, obviously, but having played with this card, it is very, very unexciting because the fail state is so bad. 1 black mana to discard a card is completely and totally unplayable. And the problem is trying to play the treasure synergy cards in general in Constructed. The cards that make treasures aren't great. And the payout for playing treasures is you just get more mana. Like, you can just use them to cast your spells earlier when you're supposed to. That's kind of like a cool thing to do, right? So having to have treasure to make your card even function is not good at all. When I first saw this card, I thought it'd be good. I think this is a huge trap. Mega trap. I know everyone loves Thoughtseize, but this is not Thoughtseize. This is not even close. I think this card is pretty much unplayable. And then in Limited, it's probably easier to pull off the old treasure trick because there's more treasure cards in Limited. But discard spells don't tend to be that great in Limited, honestly. So this card is a miss on all fronts for me. The art's bad. I just don't like it at all. I'm just not about this card. Big miss for me. And that's our trap card in black. We have Thoughtseize at home. Next up is Dryder. 5 mana for a 4/3 reach spider elf. That's creepy. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you make a 2/1 black spider with menace and reach. This card's fine. I doubt that trigger's going to happen very often. This is a 5-drop. It's not like you're sneaking your 5-drop in there. But a 4/3 reach for 5 is fine. Not as good as like a 3/5, which can block flyers and live, but it's fine. It's a fine draft card. Nothing too exciting. If you ever hit with it, it's going to be really good, but on the whole, just a reasonable rate for a 5-drop. Not super exciting. Not a card that makes my deck all the time, but if it's in my deck, I'm not like super unhappy about it. Up next is Dungeon Crawler, and Dungeon Crawler is not quite Gravecrawler, despite the fun pun. 1 black for a 2/1, comes in tapped. Whenever you complete a dungeon, it can go back to your hand. And that's a pretty steep condition. Bloodghast, all you gotta do is play a land. Gravecrawler, all you do is have a zombie. Completing a dungeon's not an easy thing to do. So pretty unexciting here. A 2/1 for 1 comes in tapped is not dreadful. A 2-power 1-drop with a relevant creature type is reasonable, but yeah, it doesn't even go to the battlefield, right? If it went back to the battlefield, it still would be a pretty, large effect for just getting a 2/1, but yeah. It's a Savannah Alliance as a zombie. This card can definitely see play constructed because your black deck might just want a 1-drop, but pretty unexciting for such a cool name. A little disappointed, honestly. In Limited, a lot better. You're more likely to recurve this in Limited, over the course of a game once, twice. But even then, it's just a medium level Savannah line. Not super exciting. It's a card. It's fine. But up next is Ebon Death Draco Lich. And we got our best in show, folks. I think this card's a lot better than it looks. It already looks pretty good. Black, and 2 for a legendary zombie dragon. It has flash. It has flying, and it enters battlefield tapped. So you're not going to be ambushing anybody with this card. But the important part here is you may cast this card from your graveyard if a creature not named this died this turn. Now note, that's not just your stuff, that's also your opponent's stuff. So in a control deck, it might be end step, Heartless Active Creature, cast this thing, untap, attack for 5, which is very, very good. It is also clearly a skeleton, I agree. I don't see a zombie here, I see a skeleton. Totally agree. Totally agree. So this thing comes in, it hits hard. Planeswalkers, they play a Planeswalker, they think they're safe. Bam, 5-power creature. It just kills your opponent, which is really important. It is fragile. I know Bone Crusher Giant's still legal for a little while longer, and not a good thing for it. But it's recursive. I don't know if you're playing like a whole bunch of this card, but as far as a recursive threat, this thing just is going to go and go and go. And that's quite nice. Again, if it didn't have flash, if it didn't have flying, I would be super happy about it. But with both flash and flying, this is a very, very surprising whole bunch of power out of nowhere that kills really, really fast. Like it a lot. Love the recursive elements on it. I like it in more aggressive decks that want to sacrifice creatures. I like it in more controlling decks that want to kill creatures. I think this card's just great. I think this card's really, really good. Not going to make much of a slash in older formats probably, but card's really cool. Like it a lot. Best in show. And then in Limited, this card's freaking awesome. You ever cast this card twice in Limited, you're in great shape. Creatures die all the time in Limited, and this card's great. Very, very impressive, this card. Super, super cool. Up next is Eyes of the Beholder. Your kind of typical, very expensive limited removal spell. 6 mana is a lot, but it is an instant. If your draft deck has got to kill something, this is not a terrible way to do it, but it is very clunky. I would not be rushing to put this card in my draft deck all the time. I want a good reason to do it, but it's mid-level quality removal for your draft deck. Up next is Fate's Reversal, 2 mana for a Raised Dead. It allows you to venture. Fine draft card. Venturing is very powerful. You trade your venturer off, and then you get it back and venture again. Pretty cool. Plays well with that 4/3 that ventures when it dies. Kind of cool. Nothing super exciting, but all in all, an okay draft common for your venture deck. If I'm not venturing aggressively, I don't want this card. But if I'm playing a venture deck, I think this card's reasonable for sure. And then in Constructed now. Fiend Death. They had to make Grief a little bit better, I guess. I don't know if this card's good with Grief because the Undying is better. But 1 black instant. Till end of turn, target creature gains. Whenever the creature dies, comes back tapped. It's under control with it, plus some counter on it. This is actually worse than the Undying, right? Because the Undying one comes in untapped. To your typical mediocre trick and limited, it's okay. It's not super great. You're gonna have this sometimes, and your opponent's gonna exile your creature if you're gonna feel dumb. They're gonna bounce your creature, you're gonna feel dumb. They're gonna be racing you and not be in a good spot. It's just your very narrow but okay limited trick that's not particularly great. It's fine. It does get a lot more value if you have comes into play effects. So for example, if you're gonna feign death on the 3/4 that ventures, or a 2/1 that draws a card and gains a life, this card goes up in value a lot. I think if you have a lot of those, this card's actually actively good. But once you're gaining value from comes into play effects, things like that, this card's just pretty middling. So deck dependent, limited filler, and then constructed, probably not. I mean, any card that costs 1 is totally reasonable. But Forsworn Paladin, 1 black for a 1/1 menace. Pay 2 mana, pay a life, make a treasure, and then pay 3, favorite creature +2/+0 at the end of turn. If you use treasure mana, gets that touch. And this card's okay. Great draft card. Great card for the treasure archetype in limited. Constructed, though, it's just okay. Spending your turn 2 to make a treasure can ramp you into a 4-drop on turn 3, but the cost is pretty high. It's pretty fragile. It's sort of mana sink, but not really great at that either. It's just okay. If there's some sort of treasure deck in Constructed, this will probably be a main part of it. But I'm just not very impressed with the treasure cards in general. So, not a big fan. Good draft card. It's not super on it. Gelatinous Cube, however. This card is super cool. Black, and 2 for a 4/3. When it comes into play, you engulf something. So you get to exile a non-ooze creature an opponent controls until the cube leaves the battlefield. So, sort of similar to Skyclad Apparition or things like that. And then you can dissolve the creature by playing a black and X, and that just kills the creature. So it stops being exiled, it goes to the graveyard, and now there's no worry about your opponent killing the cube and getting it back, which is super cool. Yeah, Faceless Butcher for all my boomers out there. Thank you, Jim and Chad. I appreciate that. I wasn't gonna make the reference because people were too young these days, but these new people don't know about these old cards. So a 4/3 is a good value for this. It's sort of like a 4/3 Chupacabra. And then also very good flicker effects too. This is a card that can definitely make the rounds in Constructed. A 4/3 for 4 that kills a creature is great. And the fact that you can permanently kill it and not get blown out later is also great. So I like this card a lot. Super fun flavor. Again, I don't know any of the D&D stuff, but this card's really fun and really cool. I like it a lot. Just a really cool card. In limited, this card is bonkers good. Bonkers good. Chupacabra in limited is phenomenal. You'll have plenty of time to activate it. Just a very good card all around. Very good on rate. Very, very solid card. Up next is Grim Bounty, your sort of premium removal spell unlimited. 4 mana, kill a sorcery. Kill a sorcery. Come on, Jim. We're only on black. We got to pull it together. I can do this. I can do this. No, yes, I can. Don't tell me I can't. This is your 4 mana generic removal spell unlimited. It's a common, kills a creature or planeswalker, which is a great change, honestly. And you also get a treasure, so a little bit of upside there. This card's fine, definitely solid. You need to kill a creature. This card honestly hasn't been too good in the last few sets. Kind of clunky, but it's certainly very, very, very solid. Is that Gandalf? Is that Gandalf? Gandalf the Grey? Wow. A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins. So, solid draft common. Probably one of the better black commons, but we'll see. We'll see. And then, Constructed, you can do a lot better than this. Grim Wanderer, a goblin. 2 mana for a 5/3 flash. That's pretty good. You can only cast it, though, if a creature died this turn. I don't think that the 3 toughness here is playable. If this was a 4/4, and we could, like, sack some creature fairly early or whatever, or, like, trade a creature off and play a 4/4 that was a little more durable, I think it would actually be better. But as a 5/3, I think this dies too many things where, like, you can play this on turn 2 or 3, and it's just going to trade with the 2-drop, and, like, that's just not good enough. So I don't think this card's good enough constructed. It is kind of cool with Mogwar Marshal, obviously, but I don't think a 2-mana 5/3 goblin is playable. Honestly, it's just, like, not good enough. So if that's an ability, it was a little tougher. But overall, I'm pretty unenthused about this card in constructed. I think this card is just going to play a lot worse than it looks, and just not super about it, honestly. Yeah, we've seen this before. We've seen this before, for sure, you know? And then in Limited, this card seems pretty good. But again, that only 3 toughness. As a 4/4, I'm, like, all about this card. Even as a 3/5, I'm all about this card. But because it's a 5/3, it's just going to trade with a lot of 2-drops and 3-drops. And that's just not worth the work that goes into this card. You know, if it had flying, bone picker, sure. Like, it just doesn't have... It's not durable enough, or it's not useful enough to really be worth the squeeze. So, not really pumped about it. It's obviously fine and Limited. I don't see it making a splash in constructed. Not super enthused. Sorry, Goblin fans. Herald of Hadar. 5 mana for a 4/4. Activated ability, 6 mana, roll a d20. 1 through 9, each opponent loses 2 life. 10 through 19, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And then on a natural 20, each opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life, make 2 treasures. So not really like that impactful. This is kind of like your typical draft card where, like, it can win the game if the board stalls. A 4/4 for 5 is not super exciting. This is a 5/4 or 5/5. I think it's actually, like, a pretty good common. As it stands, I think it's just fine. It's a mana sink. If the board's going to stall, you need a way to win the game. This card could do that for you. But all in all, it's middling. It's not super exciting. I think it's just fine. If your deck needs this effect, it's there for it. You're not always going to play it in your draft deck, though. Yeah, a nice one-of. You know, you have this card in your deck in the late game, you're feeling kind of okay about it, but you're not, like, pumped. It's not super exciting. Not a high pick in any sense of the word. Hired Hexblade is our next card. 2 mana for a 2/2. You pay a treasure, you Phyrexian Rager for 2 mana. I'm sure in Limited this card is phenomenal. These sorts of creatures that can replace themselves are awesome. There's tons of ways to make treasure in Limited that are all reasonable. I think this card is probably a phenomenal draft card for that archetype. Constructed, though, again, same problem as the Thoughtseize, where I just don't think that playing the token makers or the treasure makers this isn't worth the squeeze, you know? Just cast your 4-drop on turn 3. You don't have to play this 2/2. So I think this card is a reasonable archetype card for your draft decks, and then in constructed, it's just not good enough. It is an elf, which might matter, but Horde Robber, a 2 mana 1/3. Never does combat damage to a player, make a treasure. This probably feels like an important archetype card for the treasure deck. Again, you want to have treasures to spend on your things. This feels like the kind of card that, like, could make the rounds in constructed in certain scenarios. If, like, the games are about ramping and not much blocking and things like that. It could be a cool sideboard card for control deck. It's not really an Ophidian, but having mana advantage is pretty cool. So this card is definitely better than it looks, but more of a draft kind of archetype kind of card for the treasure deck in Limited, and not super exciting otherwise. Up next is Lightfoot Rogue. 2 mana for a 2/1. It's a halfling. Find the halfling! Sneak attack. Whenever it attacks, you roll a d20. It either gains Death Touch, it gains Death Touch and +1/+0, or it gains +3/+0 and first strike and Death Touch. So obviously the Nat 20 is really good. But realistically, it's just like a solid 2-drop. It always has Death Touch on attacking, which is good. And then it can occasionally get bigger. So solid 2-drop. If you're an aggro deck, looks pretty good. Wouldn't want to block with this card. If I'm thinking about attacking, this card seems pretty good in my draft deck. So, am I implying that halflings are hobbits? Because Wizards of the Coast lawyers will definitely disagree. Yeah. Next up is Lalith. Lalith or Lothfair, whatever. Spider Queen, black, black, and 3 for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. I like this card a lot. Whenever a creature you control dies, you put a loyalty counter on Lalith. You spend a 0 loyalty to draw a card and lose a life, similar to Obnixilis. You -3 to make 2 spiders, so 2/2/1 blockers with reach. It's pretty good. And then -8 is you get an emblem. Whenever an opponent is dealt combat damage by 1 or more creatures you control, that player lost less than 8 life this turn. They lose life equal to the difference. Whatever. The ultimate doesn't really matter. But I think this card is going to be really, really good in creature-heavy kind of black mid-range decks. Straight up by itself, it seems fine. It's a planeswalker. It's a card draw engine. It can defend itself. If you play it, you make it 2 tokens, you block with them, and you get to untap with it. Now you have a card draw engine, which is pretty cool. It's a little clunky, but this card can make threats. This card can gain loyalty. This card can draw cards. Again, I think all the planeswalkers in this set are not like snap 4-ofs, but are much better than what we're used to. And we need to sort of like readjust our perception a little bit to planeswalkers being good, you know? Sure, Sedgemoor Witch should be really, really cool, this card. Aristocratic stuff, for sure. So, I like this card a lot. Absolute bomb in Limited. Like, absolute bomb. You're already playing a bunch of creatures. Planeswalkers are very good in Limited. But I think this card will see a decent amount of play in Constructed for sure. I like this card a lot. Up next is Manticore, which is weird because I feel like there's like 20 Manticores in Magic, but they're all like Crimson Manticore or Conquering Manticore. And this is just Manticore. So we have 4 mana for a 2/1 flying flash, which is not great. Enters the battlefield, it destroys our creature that was dealt damage this turn. This is like a pretty common effect we see in Limited. And this on a 2/1 flash, 2/1 flyer is pretty good. You know, usually we see this like a 3/2 flash for 4, and the ground body doesn't really matter that much. But a flyer is more relevant. I think this is one of the better versions of this effect, although I'm also not a huge fan of this effect, because I attack my 2/2 into your 3/3, you block, I play the Manticore. So we've traded 1 for 1, my creature for your creature, and then I spent 4 mana on a 2/1 flyer, which is like, it's okay, but it's not really great. So I think this is like limited filler. It's okay. It's fine. It gets better if your opponent is playing high toughness creatures, obviously, because you're not losing your creature. And you know, if you get to play this card and your opponent's creature dies and yours doesn't, that's great. That's phenomenal. But that's not going to happen most of the time. So it's all right. Not super exciting. It feels like a better version of this card than we've seen previously. But I'm also not a big fan of this card in general in Limited. So it's just only okay. Powerword kill. 2 mana for instant, destroy target non-angel, non-demon, non-devil, non-dragon. This card scares me a bit because there are a lot of really good dragons in the set, and in Standard in the future. So it's funny. I think it's a... I'm okay. I think this card will be better in non-standard formats, as like a Doomblade variant. But I think in Standard in particular, there's just so many good dragons, and this won't kill them. That concerns me a lot. The Devil Angel stuff doesn't matter that much, but I think Dragon's the big one. So this card will definitely be played in Standard. It's a good role player, but I would not want my only kill spells to be Powerword kill, for sure. In Limited, it's obviously great. It's a Doomblade, very high pick, but be careful of this card. Also, does not kill Faceless Haven. That is true as well. Up next is Precipitous Drop. 3 mana for a aura. When it comes into play, you venture, and the creature gets -2/-2. If you finish the dungeon, it's -5/-5. This feels like an absolute premium common in Limited. Venturing is insane. So this is sort of almost like a cantrip removal spell. And then once you finish a dungeon, this is a top tier removal spell. So we have card advantage and removal in a common for 3 mana. This is probably the best black common, if I had to guess. Seems like a very, very good card. Obviously better if you are playing a more venture-focused deck, but still feels awesome. Feels very, very good. Very good card. And I don't think it's incredibly outside the realm possibility of this card to see player in Constructed, but probably not. It's more of a top-tier draft card. Ray of Enfeeblement. 1 black for an instant. Creature gets -4/-1. If it's white, -4/-4. So here's your white hoser from black. Phenomenal sideboard card. Same thing as I've been saying, in limited. In limited, this is a pretty high pick because it's going to be a first pick quality card against 40% of your opponents, and it's passable otherwise in limited too. It's one of the better ones. So this card probably makes your main deck, honestly, a lot of the time in limited because -4/-1 is like just good enough, I think. So 1 mana is great, 1 mana tricks are great. Yeah, I actually think this card makes your deck most of the time in limited, and it's going to be amazing sometimes and then fine other times. Constructive is a great sideboard card as well. 1 mana to kill basically any creature in a white deck is great. All the white decks seem pretty good in standard. In the future, looks pretty nice. So card's very good. Definitely a very, very powerful card in all formats as far as sideboard card and constructed, and then in limited seems great also. So super high quality card. Up next is Reaper's Talisman. 1 black for an artifact equipment. Whenever it attacks, it gains Death Touch. Fine. Whenever a equipped creature attacks alone, defending player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Equip 2. This card seems good. This card seems quite good. Really good limited card. You put this on your creature, makes it hard to block. Draining for 2 is amazing. This feels like a very, very solid draft card. Probably not there in constructed because realistically, I don't think it does enough for 3 mana. But great draft card. Turning all of your creatures into threats is amazing. It's cheap. It's efficient. Top-notch draft card. Top-notch. Up next is Sepulture Ghoul. 2 mana for a 2/1. And it's close to Nantuku Husk, but not quite. Sack creature, +2, but only once per turn. So we'll not be doing any sort of aristocrat tricks with this. Of course, Nantuku Husk, part of a lot of combo decks over the years, where you sack your whole board, get them all back, and sack your whole board again. This card can't do that. But it is a 2-drop. For some sort of sacrifice the aristocrat deck, I could definitely see this card seeing play in it. But that limiting factor makes it a lot worse in constructed for sure. So not as good as it looks. Reasonable card though. Honestly, in limited, I don't know if this card has much to do. There aren't that many foddery creatures, it feels like. So I'm not thrilled with it, but it's probably reasonable. It still is a 2-drop, and 2-drops are, definitely a thing you need. Oh, there's one to sacrifice. Shambling Ghast. 1/1 zombie for 1. You sack the Ghast, you get -1/-1 to a creature or a treasure. So you get a Festering Goblin with upside, or you make a treasure. Just a fine little common. The kind of card that could see play in standard under the right circumstances, but it's just a middling synergy card. Obviously very good if you have the ghoul in your deck and you're playing kind of things like that, but overall not the most exciting card. It is a zombie, which can matter too, but it's a fine card. Nothing too amazing. Nice little cog, Up next is Skullport Merchant, and what was it called? The blue one gets an upgrade. 3 mana for a 1/4. Comes into play, make a treasure. You can sack a creature or a treasure to draw a card. That's pretty good. That's a very, very good uncommon. Probably not good enough for constructed, but very, very solid draft uncommon. Being able to turn all of your treasures into cards is phenomenal. So very, very high pick and limited. Definitely a linchpin of your treasure deck, but can also just see play if you're playing creatures and stuff like that. Really good card. Probably not there in constructed, but super cool card. Up next is Sphere of Annihilation. Really cool art. Black and X for a rare artifact. Enters the battlefield with X void counters on it. Beginning of your upkeep, exile Sphere of Annihilation. All creatures and planeswalkers with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it, and all creatures and planeswalkers in graveyards with mana value less than or equal to a number of void counters on it. So sort of like a weird suspend. I guess Shadow's Verdict could be a good thing. It is pretty cool, but it sort of has the Ratchet Bomb or Navarro's Disc problem, where you play it and you don't get to use it for the first turn, and your opponent knows about it. So you play this card on 2, you say go. Your opponent has an entire turn to plan around it, and then you get to untap and use it. So while this card is pretty cool and fairly powerful, probably a little better in older formats than in current formats because it's good against cheap creatures. So in modern or historic and things like that, good against cheap creatures and so on and so forth. But I don't really like cards that you kind of have to kind of foretell or display to your opponent before you use them. I think this card's a bit of a bust, honestly. I'm not super thrilled about it. And then in limited, it's like a slow wrath. You set this up, you play it, you say go. They get to smash you with all their creatures, play around it, and then kind of like that too. So not super big on this card. It looks cool. The fact that it exiles everything and graveyards is pretty cool too. But all in all, I'm not thrilled with it. It feels like an anti-Lurrus card, honestly. They're trying to make Lurrus bad. There's a lot of like anti-Lurrus cards, I feel like, in this set. But overall, I'm not thrilled. I'm not super thrilled with this card. Let me know what you all think of this one. Up next is Thieves Tools. 2 mana for equipment. Comes into play, make a treasure token. And then equipped creature can't be blocked as long as its power is 3 or less. This card seems really good to me. This effectively costs 1 mana and equips for 2. And making your creatures unblockable and limited is pretty good, honestly. There are definitely creatures in the mirror colors that hit on damage and things like that, like the 3 mana 3/2 it draws a card, and this card seems really good on that. It makes treasure for your treasure deck, which is kind of cool. I think this card is not incredible, but probably a decent amount better than it looks. This seems sweet. I like it. Not for constructed, but definitely a cool card. Definitely a cool card in your draft decks. Again, much better if you are playing creatures that will get a bonus for hitting your opponent. It's cool. Up next is Vampire Spawn. 3 mana for a 2/3, drain 2 life. Just solid common, honestly. Just solid common. Draining 2 life to 2 life is pretty good. A 2/3 body is fine. It's a bit fillery, but definitely a reasonable card. Some reach, some life gain. It's good when you're racing. Up next is Vorpal Sword. 1 black for an equipment. Creature gets +2/+0 and death touch for black. Then if you spend 8 mana and the creature hits your opponent, they lose. That part doesn't really matter, I don't think. But it's basically a worse bone splitter for black decks. The black equip cost is very, very tough. If you're mono black, this card's pretty reasonable. Not a terrible way to play around wraths and removal spells, stuff like that. You just like equip your creature, and so on and so forth. But all in all, not super exciting. Black equip. If it costs black and equip for 1 black, it'd be a little better. I think if it was a card equipped for black and cost a black, and it was an actual like black bone splitter, we'd be talking. But I think this card is a little too clunky. In limited, sure, this card's great, but all in all, not super exciting. Warlock class, 1 black class card. Maybe your end step, if a creature died this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. It's okay for a black. Class number 2 is look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 in your hand, rest in your graveyard. That's a Ransack the Lab, which is a pretty good card, honestly. So card advantage here. I guess card parity, it replaces itself for 2 mana, which is pretty good, honestly. And then level 3 is 7 mana, beginning of your end step. Each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. That's pretty good, actually, because your the first ability says, beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. So you can just like attack with 4 creatures. Even if they all die, they'll lose 4, and you can double it, making it 8, which is pretty sweet. So this card seems very, very good in limited. We have a replacement effect where you just play it, and then it draws a card, replaces itself, and then later in the game, it can be like a lob axe to win the game. So I think this card's very, very sneakily good in limited. I like it a lot. It's not a card for constructed, but behavior end step. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. You're totally correct. The first ability only triggers once. So if a creature died, lose 1 life. Sure, that's very fair. That makes it a little bit worse. But I think the fact that this card is just like a 2 mana replace itself kind of card, and then does some chip shot damage, and then can lob axe them later is still very good. So I like this card a lot. Limited. Up next is Westgate Regent. 5 mana for a 4/4 flying vampire. Ward, discard a card. So if your opponent wants to target this card, they have to discard a card. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Sanger Vampire is freaking rolling over in its grave.
Inconceivable!
Poor Sanger Vampire, Sanger Vampire was the OG. It was the OG, The original vampire, the OV, I guess, the original vampire. But this is like your pretty classic limited bomb. You play this in limited, your opponent can't kill it, they lose the game. Real simple. Just an utterly ridiculous limited card. Absolutely agree. Constructed, just not good enough. A 4/4 flyer over 5 is not good enough. your opponent can afford to discard a card usually, you know, so not really a card for constructed, just a full-on limited bomb. That's what it is. That's what it is. Up next is white, 2 mana for a 3/2 zombie soldier. Comes in tapped, and whenever a creature dealt damage by white this turn dies, make a 2/2 tap zombie and exile that card. This card's good. Just like very, very solid on rate. A 3/2 for 2 is already fine. And then if it's, say they block with this with a 2/2, you get another 2/2, which is great. And then if you have some way to like abuse this, for example, if you use like ram through and use it to deal damage like that, prey upon, pretty cool also. This happened in the 10 new brews. I had a code spell cleric with a +1/+1 counter on it. And my opponent attacked with the white. I blocked, and they used Heartless Act to remove the counter. So it was only a 1/1. So it died. They got a 2/2, and their white lived. So those cases are pretty corner case. But if it's just a 3/2 for 2 that replaces itself, that's pretty cool, honestly. So nothing amazing. I think if it was a 3/3, it'd be like really, really good. But definitely a pretty solid card. Again, probably not playable like by itself on rate. But if there's a zombie deck or an aggressive deck or something like that, or if some other synergy is there to push it above what it is, I think this card could definitely see play in standard. And then a very solid limited card. Creatures trade all the time in limited, so very, very solid. Like first pickable limited card, I think. Up next is Yuan T Fangblade. 3 mana for a 2/2 Death Touch. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or adventure. Solid draft card. This card trades well. Adventuring repeatedly is awesome. Great card to give unblockable. Will never, run into a bad combat step because it has Death Touch. This card seems great. Seems absolutely great. Very, very high quality draft common. Very high quality. Zombie Ogre, 5 mana for a 3/5. Beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, venture. Another pretty solid one, honestly. I mean, if this ventures at least once, I think you've gotten your value. And the fact that this scales well later in the game is pretty cool, too. The body's fine. It's a zombie. Card is very, very good. Again, cards that scale are great. Venturing is great. Likes card a lot. Very solid draft card. Very solid draft card. That's it. That's black. Zombie Ogre is batting clean up here. So, YouTube folks, let me know what card you think is the best in the show here. Let me know what you think is a trap also. And fire up your Akbars. And like, comment, subscribe. If you missed any of these, of course, we already did white. We already did blue. We're doing red next. And you're all great. I love you all. Thanks, YouTube. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.